Hello, it's so good to see you again. I'm Barbara and together with Daniel I restored a historic sailing ship, Flying Coney. No, not this one, but this one. And since one 82-feet project boat isn't enough, we bought a second one. But all joking aside, we just bought this wooden trawler. And I guess you have a lot of questions now, and we hope to answer all of them in this video. But first things first, Flying Coney III was due to be scrapped at the beginning of April. But we think she is a nice ship and it would be a shame to scrap her. So we rescued her. Now we have basically two options. Either we find someone who wants to restore the ship and bring it back to life. So if you are interested in this project or you know someone who is interested, then please contact us at sailing@flyingconey.com as soon as possible. Or if we can't find anyone to keep the whole boat alive, we take off all the parts that we could reuse on Flying Coney so that at least parts of this magnificent boat can live on. So no, we are not giving up Flying Coney or are crazy and think we can handle 2 refit projects. But enough talking, let's show you our new boat.
The boat was built 1960 as a beam trawler for the Belgium fisheries. It's 17 meters long and it fished all the way up into the 1980s. Then it was bought and converted into a dream sailing ship over the course of many years. And it's a good example of how beautiful a former trawler can be as a sailing ship. Unfortunately, a few years back, a mistake was made by recalking the boat. They used the wrong putty, and the owner blamed the yacht blamed the owner, and it went to court. The boat was standing on the hard for about 5 years. The owner lost the court trail, and the boat needed to be transported. It was transported on a pontoon. It was quite expensive, and the boat ended up here in Snake, where we found it, and now we have to think about what to do with this boat.
It's an amazing boat. Once you get on board and start looking around, it's impressive how large the timber is, and just the general construction of the boat is what's most impressive to me. Lots of little details that are really probably not necessary, but a really nice added touch to it. There's a couple of butterfly hatches that are really well made. It's amazing that things like this are still around, and it's really cool to not let them go to the scrapyard.
I'm no wooden boat expert and I'm not a surveyor, but on our boat search we came across about 4 other similar sized wooden boats. And in my opinion, the condition of this boat is not as bad as it first seems. Despite of a few really obvious damages that needs to be repaired, the hull is in good shape. There is almost no rot. All the places where you usually would assume that there are damages, they are solid and look quite okay in my opinion. One of the obvious damages is that there was some sort of stray current or electrolysis damage on the prop. It's a bronze propeller and it looks like Swiss cheese. There was some sort of dezinkification and obviously this boat needs a new prop.
Since Flying Coney is a huge project, currently completely empty and lacking most of the interior and the entire rig, we are always looking for boats that are about to be scrapped, but still have usable parts like portholes, masts, sails, blocks or a nice interior. We already had a boat in mind, however we had to abandon this idea for obvious reasons.
One option we have to save costs on Flying Coney, especially when it comes to converting her into a sailing ship and buying a rig, is to look for ships like that who are in beyond repair. I'm not saying that this ship is beyond repair.
So we kept looking and stumbled over this beauty. The ad said it will be scrapped at the beginning of April and it was already mid-March, so we had to be fast. We visited the boat and were very impressed by the high level of craftsmanship. We were not sure if this ship can be saved, but we knew it would be a shame to scrap all of it, especially since part of the interior and parts of the rig would fit perfectly on Flying Coney. So the first thing we did when we arrived here was to tidy up and to get rid of thousands of liters of bilge water to get a better impression of the actual state of the boat.
We spent a good amount of time cleaning up the bilge in the boat. It was holding a little bit of water. It's been sitting here for a little bit of time. So we pumped the bilge out, used the manual pumps, which was a lot of fun at first. And then, after the 5th tank, it wasn't as much fun, but it still had to be done.
Oh, well, I personally was in charge of getting the bilge to the pump out station with the dinghy. Pump out station is 5-10 minutes dinghy away, so we can't get rid of the bilge water directly into the canals. So we had to fill up jugs and barrels and fit them into the dinghy to get to the pump out station, pump everything, and we did that. I think we did 5 or 6 runs in total. I kind of had the good job on that one because I didn't have my head in the bilge.
Once we were done with the cleanup, we inspected the ship thoroughly. And despite some obvious damages, the overall condition of the ship is actually pretty good. So we think it is definitely possible to restore it. And since we do love historic ships, we would be very happy if we find someone who is willing to save it. However, it isn't easy since there is a deadline. The ship has to be gone at the beginning of July because the yacht needs the space. So if you are interested in the ship, please let us know as soon as possible. Because in order to save at least parts of this beautiful ship, we have to start to transfer parts quite soon. So the sooner we find someone for the ship, the more is still in place.
On deck it's quite obvious how well the conversion into a sailing ship was done and how much attention to the details was made. For example, all the end grain at the Samson posts and all that is protected with bronze plates. A lot of bronze parts are still in place, for example the portholes. So it's really well done and nicely done. But unfortunately also a lot of the bronze equipment has been stripped and has been robbed on this boat. But from a technical standpoint, for example, the bulwark stanchions, they're quite okay, which is usually a problematic area on wooden boats. And also the deck overall is in quite good condition, but I think it should be recaulked and because it's slightly leaking at the moment. Of course, we leave the equipment in place as long as possible to make it easier for a potential new owner. But on deck there are many parts we could reuse on Flying Coney. For example, this nice butterfly hatch here, the portholes, the steering column, and also this nice long bowsprit.
It's pretty rough shape at the moment. Certainly a project I wouldn't tackle on my own. But working on it, we've realized that it's not as bad as it looks. For example, I was kind of surprised that the hull is still somehow watertight because it holds the bilge water that was in. I must say it's a pretty cool boat.
One of the reasons why we rescued this boat is this extremely well-made interior. Someone only used the finest wood and the finest materials and had spent years of crafting it, so it would be a real shame that all that goes into scrap, and we could reuse a lot of the wood on Flying Coney. A few words about the general layout. This boat is an ideal yacht for 2 people to live on, and it could accommodate about 6 to 7 people. I'm standing here in the saloon with the galley, with the seating arrangement and with a couch. Forward of me there is a companionway and a dog house, a sheltered area while sailing. Forward of the ship there is the sleeping compartment with one double and 2 single, and there is also an aft cabin for 2 relatively small people. Unfortunately, also the same thing that happened on deck happened here in the interior, so a lot of the beautiful bronze equipment like the lamps or the hardware is missing. That's why it looks a little bit unorganized with the stores just standing around and all that. But with new hardware and new paint, this interior should be good to go again.
So what are our options with this wooden boat? Ideally we find someone who has the time and the knowledge to restore this piece of history. We would help to arrange everything and then move on and focus on preparing Flying Coney's shipyard time. And I'm sure if we had more time we would find someone. However, even if no one wants the boat, it still would be fine for us. Because after all we bought this boat as a donor boat for Flying Coney. It would be nice to have the bronze portholes in the aft cabin once we lowered the aft deck. And also the butterfly hatches would add a nice wooden contrast on the steel deck. And of course most of the interior, the beds and the cupboards would fit perfectly. And we could also reuse the masts and the bowsprit. Of course the masts are too small for Flying Coney, but we could reuse them as spars, as gaffs, booms or yards.
The boat has a Perkins Sabre engine from 2008, and the engine was just fitted into the engine room but never finally connected to the drive shaft. So it has about 10 running hours and is like new. And the Perkins Sabre is a quite reliable and solid engine without any electronics. But the reason why I wanted to show you the engine room is because here we do have access to the frames and to the stringers of the boat. So I do want to show you a little bit the structure of the boat. Here in the engine compartment we do have access to the hull, and from what I can see is that the wood looks in really good conditions. I've found no signs of rot or any moist or wet wood. So I do think this boat is in far better condition than we initially thought. So the frames are in good conditions, the stringers are in good conditions, the planks are in good condition. So it's a quite nice boat if you ask me.
If the boat was built in the 60s and people are interested in restoring it, it certainly seems possible. You know, the hull needs some work. There's a little bit of rot and some boards need to be replaced, recaulked, I guess. But I guess you could go either way with it. You could make it a sailing ship. You could make it, I guess, a working boat if you wanted to. It has a big marine diesel in it, so it would certainly work well under its own power.
So now I'm in the aft cabin, where we do have 2 additional sleeping places. But here in the aft cabin, for me it's quite obvious why I prefer steel over wood, because the wooden construction, like the frames, take up a lot of space. So here it's just crawling space and not full standing height in the aft cabin. But I do know that a lot of people are enjoying wooden boats and they do love it. I do think that the hull was restored before the interior was fitted in. So I do think it's a good boat to start the restoration project, to be honest. And it would be really nice if we can find someone who is willing to restore this piece of history.
So overall, the condition of the Flying Coney III is way better than we thought. Of course, she needs some repairs and there is the deadline, but we think it's definitely worth it. So if you are interested in the ship, please contact us at sailing@flyingconey.com. And you probably noticed that all of a sudden Flying Coney is in Snake. And that is not due to our amazing video editing skills. But since this is a big step in the project and we hope to find someone who can save this ship, we decided to share this real-time update with you. If you want to see more real-time updates and help us to keep the project and these videos going, then head over to Patreon. There we have weekly crew meetings where we talk about what's happening right now and discuss upcoming projects. So you are much more involved in the process. We would love to meet you there. And also a big thanks to everyone who already supports us on Patreon, PayPal and Super Thanks. Your generosity really helps us to keep this whole thing going and allows us to take the extra time to make and edit these videos. And that's all we have time for today. Next time we continue to prepare Flying Coney for our trip to Snake, and of course there will be also a video about our journey. It was our first real voyage on Flying Coney and it was quite an adventure. And we can't wait to share it with you. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.